Good afternoon. My name is CJ Davila, and I'm the Executive Director of the Florida Green Building Coalition. Welcome to today's webinar featuring Hydraloop. For today's presentation, attendees will be muted during the presentation. If you have specific questions you'd like to have answered, please either raise your hand or use the chat feature. At the end of the presentation, we'll take questions. I can make sure we get all of those answered for you. The webinar is being recorded and will be available on the Florida Green Building Coalition's YouTube channel. So if you just go to YouTube and look up Florida Green Building Coalition, you'll be able to find our channel with information, including the presentation from today. FGBC is a nonprofit corporation providing third-party certification for green buildings, homes, and local governments within the state of Florida. Founded in 2000 and dedicated to improving the built environment in Florida. For today's presentation, we are highlighting an FGBC member and a product that helps to reduce water and water usage and conserve water. FGBC does not endorse any product or service. We are just simply presenting our members with a product or a service that we feel is beneficial. With that, I'd like to introduce Hydraloop today, and I'm going to turn the screen over to them for their presentation.
Excellent. Good afternoon, everyone. Very sorry for the delay, some technical difficulties, which always seem to happen when I'm ready to join a presentation. Thank you for joining us today. On the call with me today, I'm Fernando Ramirez, Managing Director for Hydraloop USA. A couple of members from our team in the US are with me here. Bradley Fingston, who's our sales engineer. He'll talk a little bit about the technology as well. And Valerie Hackney, who's our marketing manager and has been working with us the last couple of weeks and putting a couple of our presentations together. So CJ, thank you for the opportunity. Florida Green Building Coalition, we applaud your efforts. We thank you very much for the time today to talk a little bit about water and technology challenges, not only globally, nationally, but specific to Florida. Next slide, Valerie. We are all familiar with the news that have been occurring for the last couple of years globally, talking about the water crisis. So, challenge to the global community, given the climate change, increase in population, a number of different factors that are impacting the significant water crisis that we are experiencing. It's important to note, though, that a lot of these challenges are not just in third world countries or outside of the US. If you note by this graphic here, many of our challenges are right here in the United States and on the West Coast, primarily as you hear about the Colorado River and Lake Mead and the challenges and threats to the economy and population on the West Coast, California, Arizona, and New Mexico. But it's also important to understand that all of those challenges also exist in different parts of our country. And we'll talk a little bit more detail about the challenges in Florida today. And these are challenges that are occurring every day as the new development, as the population continues to move into Florida. I would suggest if you have the time, watch a documentary on Netflix that was very well done. It's called Brave Blue World. This documentary really highlights in detail the challenges of the global water crisis. And it also shows potential solutions available in the marketplace. So if you get an opportunity, take a look at that documentary. It's very well done. But let's talk a little bit more detail about Florida specifically. Next slide. The growing water challenges in Florida are really primarily driven by increase in population and challenges to the aquifer. In Florida, 94% of the water used domestically is driven from the aquifer. So think about that for a minute. I saw a really interesting data on specific to Florida on the Department of Environmental Protection, where it talks about 1.4 billion gallons of water are taken out of the aquifer every day in Florida. Think about that for a moment. 1.4 billion gallons of water are taken from the aquifer every day in Florida for domestic water use. Florida population, we know Florida continues to expand, continues to be a haven for retiree communities, for increased population. We see the challenges in climate change that are adding to the water sources. And we're also starting to see a lot of activity on the regulatory side. So the challenges on the water crisis in Florida, in many parts of the United States, are not just water as usage and level of usage and aquifer and saltwater intrusion on the global communities, but also it's this regulatory approval process that needs to be amplified and more awareness. And Florida has taken some significant steps towards that in the last couple of months. And we'll talk about that a little bit. Next slide. One of the things that we as a company, we as Hydraloop, we have developed a decentralized graywater solution system that allows us to use the water from a home, graywater, lightly contaminated water, and use it a second time. Flush toilets for your garden, for topping of your pool. But the way we look at the market is we're really bringing our solution initially, our market entry is the new homes. Where are the new homes being built? Where's new sustainable and innovative and progressive communities emerging in the United States? So as we looked at the US map, the top 10 markets, in Florida is in the top 3. Florida has continued to grow. It's expanding aggressively. It continues to expand in population. That is adding to the stress on the water levels, on the water consumption. So when we think of Florida, we've also seen the data, 300,000 people move into Florida every year. I've talked to many developers, maybe many of you on the call, that your challenge is building these communities fast enough to meet the market demand. We have always maintained sustainability and innovation as part of those new homes. The industry historically has thought of sustainability as primarily renewable energy, solar panels, which many homes have today and many homes are being built solar ready. We submit to you for your thought and consideration, they need to be graywater recycle ready. So we'll share a little more about the technology. Next slide. Just as some background, water consumption in Florida, 87 gallons per day per person. That's the average consumption by an individual in the state of Florida, 87 gallons per day per person. On the bottom of the slide, you'll see how that indoor household, this is an example from one of our websites where we show the gallons per household per day that are used. And on the left-hand side, you'll see that Florida has been one of the top markets in building master plan communities. 12 of the top 50 master plan communities have been highlighted are in Florida, and they continue to grow. And master plan communities, like Babcock Ranch, for example, have a very aggressive sustainability policy and initiatives to make sure those communities have sufficient natural resources, water, energy, to last for the next 50 to 100 years. Next slide. So as we think about development in Florida, and this is a slide and information that we received from the Orlando Economic Development Partnership. We've spoken to them several times. We've met with them. We've met with Orlando Utility Commission, and there is no shortage of developments. Certainly in the Orlando area, construction permits continue to increase. We see a significant amount of new homes being built in the greater Orlando area. And we also know that the water challenges are impacting that market with restrictions and opportunity to increase the use of water reduction initiatives. Next slide. We'll talk a little bit about the Florida Water Star program, which has a significant impact on water conservation. But from a builder's perspective, when we look at economic benefits, part of the conversation today involves improved density and intensity credits. So the ability to build more homes if you include certain water conservation initiatives, including graywater recycling, are part of what the governor signed into law last year under Senate Bill 64. For those of you that are familiar with Senate Bill 64, the governor of Florida signed that bill that included the expansion in usage of graywater recycling systems in new homes and gives builders that include that kind of innovation and technology into their communities, it gives them density credits. And that's important from a builder's developer. You're able to put more homes in a plot of land if you have certain initiatives in place. We've also been aggressively looking, our team has been researching the permitting process and the impact fees in Florida. We'll share with you some examples of actual municipalities and actual organizations, water companies in Florida that are giving credits for impact fees. And the permitting process is becoming quite competitive in many parts of Florida, which means from a permitting process, there are some jurisdictions, and Bradley will share an example with us, that are actually providing a systems rating, a point systems rating to approve permits. And those permits include water conservation initiatives. So there's the ability to accumulate points in order to improve your permitting process. That's becoming more and more relevant, not only in Florida, but also in other parts of the country. So those are important economic benefits. There are other benefits to the new home buyer that is looking for sustainable homes. They look for LEED credits. They look for green certified homes. They look for homes that have a social impact and environmental footprint to reduce your carbon emissions and carbon footprint. So again, think of what we did 20, 25 years ago when solar renewable energy was being introduced to the market, and how homes have advanced and now are being built solar ready. Water's following that same path. We're in a parallel path to what we saw in the energy space when we think about water within a home, and it includes both water conservation on the irrigation side, but also inside the home, which is really where we bring a lot of benefit to all of these economic drivers. Next slide. So let's talk about Florida Water Start, one of my favorite programs in the country. This is something that was introduced, I believe, in 2006 by the St. Johns River Water Management District. It was championed by our good friend, Deidre Irwin, who has taught us a lot about what the situation is in Florida, but what can we do about it going forward? Right? The good news is that there are solutions. There's technology-ready solution like Hydraloop that can help you as we build these homes improve the ability to conserve water. The Florida Water Start program is a certificate program for new existing homes and commercial developments. INP 7, and this is for gold standard, Florida Water Start Gold. INP 7 provides 6 points for gray water is used to flush toilets. And think about that for a minute. We should not be using fresh water to flush toilets. We're throwing water away every day. Everybody on this call, every day we throw water away, and it's a precious resource that we need to be more carefully prepared to address as we continue to see the challenges that population, climate change, all of the above bring to us. Florida Water Start, I think, has developed a quite interesting program in order for developers to take advantage of it. This is one example. Next slide. And this is more details that we've been able to locate that talk specifically to the Florida opportunities, both on code mandates, and I emphasize the word mandate, and also rebates that are being discussed in the state that exists today. So from a code mandate, think about this for a second. Builders need to obtain Florida Water Start, meet Florida Water Start standards in order to get a permit. And under code mandates, we show some examples here. Mulberry, Polk City, Lake Alfred Lake. This is something that will continue to increase as we continue to experience water challenges. So these are current existing mandates that require the Florida Start certification, or at least meet the standards. Now, on the rebate side, we're seeing more and more of these. Tampa Bay Water, Polk County, Orlando Utility Commission, offering $300 rebates on Florida Water Starts. City of Palm Coast, 20% reduction in utility impact fees. Impact fees, as most of you know is that fee that you have to pay for every home to connect you to water and sewer and local services. So these are very real programs that are in the marketplace. These are programs that we anticipate will increase in acceptance and will accelerate the need for water conservation in technology like Hydraloop, where our ability to save up to 35% of water consumption in a home is measurable, it's meaningful. And if you think of developments that are building 300, 1,000, 2,000 homes, if we can save 30, 40 gallons per day at each of those homes, those numbers are of significant importance to the water situation in Florida. Next slide. I spoke briefly about Senate Bill 64. I encourage you all to look into it or reach out to me for additional information. We've looked at it in great detail, but that was signed in July by the governor of Florida to accelerate the use of graywater recycling in new homes being developed. And the fundamental question that was being asked that led to a lot of this activity around Senate Bill 64 really evolved around the fact, or the question, can lack of water impact economic growth? Can lack of water impact economic growth? The answer is yes. And the answer is needs to include sustainable, innovative solutions that need to be accelerated in adoption by all the stakeholders, developers, builders, architects, engineers, the water companies, and the end user. From a homeowner perspective, the benefits are immediate. You save money on water. We're using water twice. Bradley will talk a little bit more about the technology, but the idea is we're taking lightly contaminated water from a shower, from the bathtub, from air conditioning. We're taking it into our system and we use it a second time. So we do not use fresh water to flush toilets, for garden irrigation, to top off your pool, for washer and dryer. Use water twice is our motto. We impact that by taking water that's already in your home. Each home has the capability, has its own water source that can be treated, sanitized, and used a second time. I always like to mention the impact of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. There is the global agenda that has a 2030 very aggressive goals, and we certainly impact SDG 6, 11, 12, and 13, to name a few. Next. What is Hydraloop? How does it work? Let me turn this over right now to Bradley, who will talk a little bit more about the technology itself, give you some additional background on the actual implementation, how it works, how it delivers, and I'll come back on the line before he closes out. Bradley?
Thank you, Fernando. So just starting off right off the bat here, you'll see a simple diagram that shows you the inputs and the outputs on the lower end, inputs at the higher end. A lot of people may not know what gray water is. It's the lightly contaminated water from your bathtub, shower, laundry, even possibly AC condensate. The inputs here as well, we do need a backup water as well as electricity. It's very, very low energy input for the system. It also has a Wi-Fi connection for monitoring. So, and you'll see all the outputs below. Pool, sewer, we can use it for all toilet flushing as well as washing machine. Next slide. So the beauty of this technology, as Fernando was saying, low upkeep costs, because it doesn't have any filters, chemicals, membranes that we need to replace so often. Me being from the filtration industry, I'm all too familiar with that, where people have to replace their filters or do some type of maintenance every few months, every few weeks even. So this system actually uses very innovative technology that is very beneficial for this type of stuff. So the focus was to have as little maintenance as possible. And we don't run into those typical failure points that we'll run into with older type systems like BRAC systems and stuff like that, the older gray water systems. But how does our technology do that? So next slide. So here's a simple, well, it's not very simple when you read it all, but I can explain it very simply, but it's a 6-step process. I'll go ahead and sum up the first 4 together because the first 4 is basically use of gravity and microbubbles. What this does is this separates the heavier and light suspended solids to fall or rise up. And at the top, you'll get a skimmer. So you see flotation, floating dirt. This is hair. Anything that's light attaches to these microbubbles and skimmed off. It actually skims off and falls down, as well as anything heavier falls down. And this all connects with the other top tank, which is the MBBR. So it actually has a microbiological biome. It's basically a lot of surface area for all this airborne bacteria to attach to. So it's an aerobic process that happens in there. So not only does it get rid of the suds, it gets rid of the bacteria, as well as gets rid of the solids, as well as hair and all stuff you'll find regularly in gray water from a bath. The very, very last thing it does after a very long process of getting the cleanest water it can is it'll actually siphon from the center so it gets as little solids again as possible and go to the last step, which is the UV disinfection, which it actually recirculates through the UV every 4 hours. So if you know any traditional gray water regulations or restrictions, it'll actually tell you that you can't hold gray water, this is assuming agricultural tanks, you can't hold it for more than 24 hours. Well, ours passes NSF and it goes through UV disinfection every 4 hours. So we don't have to worry about anything like that. So this is an example of our water. This is a before and after. As you can see the suds, you can see the solids, you can see how opaque it is. And this is what it looks like after. This is our NSF approval, our certification. We do have our NSF stamp as well as IATMO and a few other certifications. So this does fall in line with our IPC, International Plumbing Code, under the non-potable section, section 13. So you can read that there. I've already cleared with many in the state of Florida as well as other states, the Florida DEP, a few other places that I'll talk more about. But yes, we are pretty much ready to go for Florida. So here is a diagram, east-west diagram of a build. So this is a 2-floor example. It shows the inputs, it shows the drains going down. This is a regular gravity setup for the 2nd floor, and you can see the outputs going away from the Hydraloop as well. If it's a single floor, we can do the same thing. You would have the shower here, but you'd also need a sump pump or a lift pump to bring it above. But yeah, that's pretty much that. So here is a final installation. This is before installation as well as final installation. So if you are a builder and we are roughing these in to have the gray water technology set up beforehand, think of it quite like your low voltage, your high voltage. You're meeting it all in one spot in the house so the electrician can work on it, or the low volt or the cable guy can work on it all in one spot. This works exactly the same way for your gray water inputs as well as your outputs to your toilets and all that. You're meeting it all in one spot, and this is what it will look like. You'll see the bypass there on the left. So before the Hydraloop is installed, everything still runs normally. You see the 3-way diverter there. So everything still runs normally, even without the Hydraloop. If you have it, just like Fernando was saying, solar ready, this is exactly what it would look like for gray water recycling ready. So. And here's the example Fernando was talking about. So in particular, I've been talking a lot to the Florida Keys, as it's, I've been studying some of the highest charging as far as water companies in the state of Florida. I know a few Southwest Florida, like Naples and stuff, Fort Myers, I know is particularly higher than the rest, Ocala, a few other places, but particularly the Keys, as we know, they don't have a lot of space. Their permitting process is very extreme. Not a lot of permits make it through, so that's why they have this point system. So the point system, specifically in there, is the dwelling unit includes the installation of a graywater reuse system meeting the requirements of Florida Building Code. So especially in the Florida Keys, we will find a lot of benefit here as they don't have a lot of space, nor do they have a lot of the energy that they will have on the mainland. So for situations like this is a great example of how they are using energy conservation, water conservation to help the permits, because all those permits, you know, probably only 5% actually make it through. All those people are competing to get their permits in. And a little example at the top, you know, Florida has about an annual rate of 150,000 homes. It was actually a lot more last year. And let's say an average of 3 people per house, 80 gallons per person. At a very consistent rate, the Hydraloop saves 30%. This, again, is based on end user behavior. I can go into that further with questions. But we can save about 10 million gallons per day if 150,000 homes had a Hydraloop. Or 150 million, sorry. Next slide. I think this is Fernando. Muted?
Thank you. I got it. Thank you. So the couple of the highlights of what Bradley mentioned, I want to repeat it. They're worth repeating. The system design took several factors into account. So the key value to our technology is no filters, no membranes, no chemicals. The reason that's important, that's critically important, is because filters and membranes lead to clogging, lead to change of filters, increases the maintenance of a system. So by this technology not having those components, it's low cost of ownership, reduced maintenance.
They also go in a landfill. Remember that.
Right. So there's also the design of itself. If you see the Hydraloop unit there, we have this scenario of a home. It's a very elegant system. It can go into your utility room. It's not industrial grade. It doesn't have to go in the ground. You know, if you look at the history of water recycling systems, graywater systems, they were always very industrial looking, almost like a sewer system. So if you look at the design, it looks like a small refrigerator. You can go into the garage, into the utility room, into the basement, if they have basements in different parts of the country. But as we look at the future of homes, and the future is now, we talk about solar panels, right? That's already included. Homes are being built solar ready. And we anticipate homeowners, the sophisticated, the progressive, the environmentally friendly, sustainable homeowner, when they go pick out their home in your development, they're going to pick out their washer and dryer, their refrigerator, their heater, and their Hydraloop. We think within 10 years, it's going to be mandatory to have some component of water conservation initiative built into every home. It has to. We're at that stage, we're at that crossroads where we're being significantly challenged going forward. So this is a technology that's market ready. It's available today. We're anxious to meet, talk to you, understand, work with you on developing a project to include your local jurisdiction. We'll put a team to help you and collaborate with you to have a project developed. These are available for single family homes right now. So again, think of our market entry, new homes being built. But our product line also will include condos, multifamily homes, and commercial applications, right? I want to leave you with this thought in the same question that I opened with earlier. Can lack of water impact economic growth? There's an abundance of technology in the marketplace. I think the challenge in the industry today is how do we accelerate acceptance? How do we move into a more aggressive path of adopting technology? And again, I came from the energy space. I spent a good part of 5 years preaching the words of solar power. And how do we include that and adopt it. And California took the lead because of blackouts and brownouts. If you remember when power was a challenge in California, that's when solar and renewable energy really took hold and really came into the marketplace. So we are also going to be at the Southeast Building Conference show, August 3rd and 4th. We welcome you to come by. We're going to have an actual unit in the booth. We're at booth 1410. We have some passes for you to join us at the exhibit. Come talk to us, ask us questions, challenge us. But I want to make sure that we all have significant information on technology that's available in the marketplace that can help your projects, that can help the water situation in the state of Florida.
Fernando, I do have a couple questions, and I've got Deirdre who would like to have just say something. As far as questions go, can you share the estimated cost for install in single-family homes?
So the install is really a variable because it depends on who your plumbers are. Who are you using? What are the rates? Union, non-union. We are very confident we can share a price for the technology itself, the cost of the equipment. So we have two basic models. Diane, two basic models, the H300, which is really designed for smaller homes, 2 to 3 people, 2 bathrooms, a couple of people in the house. That H300 retails for $4,500. The bigger unit is the H600, twice the capacity. It's for bigger homes, homes that are 4 to 10 people. And that MSRP is around $6,400. And again, that doesn't include taxes or delivery or the installation, but that's a ballpark for the actual technology itself.
And then how does impact fees play a role in convincing a developer to design in HL?
Yeah, so impact fees are quite a topic of discussion. In when we met with Orlando Utilities Commission, for example, there's a $600 fee that has to be paid for any new home that's built in that service territory. And that's in any utility territory, there's impact fees. So part of our agenda, what we're working or discussing with several utilities is consider giving a rebate or a reduction to the impact fees if a developer brings innovative solution, water conservation solution into a development, into a community. So we're driving towards a financial impact, right? And those are some of the economics that I shared earlier on what's available today in certain jurisdictions in Florida, right? Where they're actually looking now to incentivize, and that's a key word in our industry, and that's a key issue in our industry that we need to be more aggressive in driving. How do we incentivize technology that will ultimately save thousands of gallons of water every day per home?
And Fernando, Deirdre, Erwin would like to speak. Deirdre, you can go ahead and speak.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, Ms. Erwin.
Hello there, Fernando. Okay, I actually put up the hand by mistake at the very beginning because I didn't know if I was in the right place, but I would like to advocate that I think the writing is on the wall with that bill that passed, that the state is really keen to invest in options that will allow us to use alternative sources wherever possible. So we work with our utilities to explore alternative sources for their entire service area. And then opportunities like this allow a builder to perhaps explore local alternative sources inside the home and save that 20% of indoor use is usually toilet flushing. So that's significant savings. So we're definitely a fan at the Water Management District of all these solutions that are being discussed.
Fernando, if there's a power outage or the system stops working, will the areas that use the water be affected?
So I can answer that. As far as power goes, the system does have a pump that it uses to distribute the outgoing water. So it does have a 30-minute backup power battery. We do recommend putting a UPS on it. But we also, what I'll recommend is also just in those cases, if you do experience a lot of power outages, if it's out for more than a day, you're dealing with hurricanes, you can always set up a bypass loop in those cases. But it does have backups for that. The programming, I didn't really even touch on it, but the actual software that our R&D made themselves is connected to a mainframe network. I can monitor them, I can see them all, and they are smart enough to know if the Wi-Fi goes out for a certain amount of time, it'll dump the water. If the power comes back on, it'll dump the water because it doesn't know how good it is. So it actually has sensors, like with the UV, it has a sensor and everything. So there are automatic checks to this system that do cover those things. But regardless, we do recommend a UPS for it, just especially being in Florida. I put everything on a UPS that I think is important. So just because of lightning.
Do you have an estimated ROI?
The ROI discussion, and we have a calculator. We've developed a model where we need to take into account the specific utility rates by jurisdiction. And as we all know, those rates vary everywhere in the country, everywhere in Florida. Higher rates in California, Colorado, but rates we do know are going to increase. That's one of the impacts of how to reduce water consumption. Well, you charge more, right? So that, I think that's coming down the pike. And nationally, we've seen an increase over the last 5 years. So on an ROI discussion, some of the calculations we've done, and again, depending on the rates, also the sewer rates, because we impact the amount of water that's being returned through the system. So there's a sewer rate impact. We're calculating anywhere from 4 to 7 years on a reasonable water rate table.
And lift sump pump to be added to equipment cost plus the install fee. Can you just kind of clarify that?
Yeah, so the pump really depends on what the design of the installation is, right? If we're going to use gravity, if it's on the first floor, we don't need to include one. But if you have a bathroom or something that's in the basement that you need a lift pump, then we recommend a lift pump. We go through all the diagrams. Whenever a developer has a build specs, we review them, we make recommendations, we look at the layout of the piping, and then we make recommendations of what's required for that system to be installed. And as I mentioned earlier, the prices that I shared with you are primarily for the technology. It does not include the installation fee. That's a discussion with the plumber, their rates, their labor rates, their time, materials. So that's all separate from the figures that I shared with you earlier.
And Fernando, is there, do you have an idea of how many roughly have been sold, and is there a warranty associated with it?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now in the US, we've sold about 80 systems. Several have been installed on the West Coast. We have a couple of channel partners. Our go-to-market strategy is we're also recruiting and talking to distributors and installers that want to distribute our system. So a couple of those in California have bought several units for distribution within their territories. But from our perspective and from this conversation, we really want to have a direct conversation with developers, with builders, engineering, architect firms that are including sustainable and innovative solutions into their new home and to their new communities.
And is there a warranty associated with the purchase?
Yep, 2-year warranty, all parts free from defects. There is maintenance to it. There is wear and tear, which we do have a 10-year warranty on the major components, but 2-year warranty is for all parts. And then we have a maintenance plan after that. Suggested maintenance plan per the partner.
Any other questions for Hydraloop? Oh, we've got Vicky who would like to ask a question. Go ahead, Vicky.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, I'm wondering if you all are aware of a company called S2A Modular. They are building a huge warehouse in McClenny, northwest of Jacksonville. They're including a lot of sustainable type technology in what they're doing, but I don't know if they have anything regarding this.
It's a great point, and thank you for the question. We are very familiar with S2A. We've had several discussions with them. We visited their first warehouse in Northern California. It's an incredible structure, and that's a disruption to the market, right? Prefabricated home, modular homes.
Yes.
And I know they're putting, I think their next, one of their factories is going to be in the Jacksonville market, correct?
Yeah, that's the new warehouse that they're building in McClenny, a manufacturing facility and warehouse. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. And those, it's an incredible, the way they build those and the amount of homes they'll be able to build that are going to be not subject to the elements of weather. So yes, we're having aggressive discussions with them. They have a very good renewable solution already on the energy side, but water is part of their conversation. Water is part of their sustainability agenda. So we are looking to include our technology into their build outs, especially in some of the states where they're putting some of these factories, which include Texas and Florida.
Yes. My husband and I have looked at some of their modular units for purchase ourselves. Seems like they're doing a good job of what they're doing.
They are, and it's very interesting. The fact that my traditional thought process about prefabricated homes will completely change when I saw the S2A product.
Yes.
These are magnificent homes, anywhere from 2 or 3 bedroom to a mansion. Their prefab is going to have an impact on student housing at universities. There's a significant change in the industry that's going to drive more of that. And I'm happy to report S2A has a strong sustainability policy, and that's why we're having these conversations.
Great. Thanks.
And Fernando, what happens if the system fails once installed? Do you still get water to the fixture?
Yeah, I'll answer that. So that kind of goes back to the power issue, but although that's the entire system. So with the software, it actually keeps checks and balances on all these things like the UV. If it notices it's not working, it will just deliver you the backup water. Hence that backup water line we have, that is actually for the automatic back flushing, automatic self-cleaning the system also does. So it does have a backup line in case something does go wrong. If it notices something goes wrong, if there's no water in the system at all, or if it's just starting out, or the biome is restarting or something like that. So in any of those cases, there's a backup water line. And you'll see that in the slides if you go back and review it. And then someone said, can it be installed outdoors? We do need some type of temperature control. San Francisco is one of the few places where we can even get away with installing it outside, as they don't really change too much temperature. But especially Florida, if it gets over 100, we can't guarantee what could happen. So typically want to be AC controlled. And then the last question is, oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. I was gonna ask the question.
There was a storage tank. It pretty much has storage tanks. For the garden, you can actually set priorities on your app with the system. So you could set it to prioritize your garden. So every night, if you have a garden tank, or just like a big barrel that holds water for your garden, you can have it, any of the recycled water, the cleaned water, it can actually push it over to that tank every night. So if that's what you mean by a storage tank, yes, you can add one on as you'd like, but it doesn't require any type of storage tank added on.
How would you incorporate it into multifamily?
So in multifamily, there's a couple of options. We have a product that we call Cascade. So it's the ability to connect a couple of our systems in a multifamily home. If that home is designed to have one main water line, then redistribute to each multifamily home. Or if each home in a multifamily dwelling has its own water meter and water source, we would install a Hydraloop in each one of those residences. Now, the only caveat to that is sometimes multifamily homes are considered commercial applications. We would need to check that code with Florida.
And then we are working on the concealed, so we can, which is like a much smaller Hydraloop that we can put in smaller units. So.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's got the clarification with the 24 plus units.
Yeah, so 24 plus units, and we'd be glad to review the specs of the plan, but it can either be a centralized location at the bottom of the building that can contribute to the whole 24 units, or as Bradley just mentioned, we are working on developing a concealed, which is really a smaller unit that will primarily address shower to toilet, which less intrusive as far as the plumbing, and more direct towards capturing lightly contaminated water from the shower.
For example, in that case, the concealed being small enough to fit inside the wall behind the toilet, and it connects right to the shower right behind it. So you have it just using those two. You know, for example, one of our installs in San Francisco was a retro. His garage, or his which is temperature controlled, but his garage is right below his master. He just wanted to do his master, so he just took all the pipes from below, hooked it up to the Hydraloop, did his garden, and that's it. It's just the the parents living there, so nobody else is there. They mostly use the master. So I asked him, hey, you gonna do all the other bathrooms? No, I'm just gonna start with this. This is what I'm doing. So even in that retro sense, he's still making a lot out of the use of the system. Just doing one toilet, one shower, because that's their primary use. So in the case of like apartments and these smaller units, the concealed will be very valuable for those types of situations.
And final question, are there any similar units on the market?
So yes, there is competition in the market. We've seen some companies focus primarily on commercial applications. That's certainly the case in San Francisco, for example, where there's a big mandate and there's a law that was passed that any building, I think over 50,000 square feet, must have a water recycling system. But on the homeowner level, yeah, there's another company that we have seen in the marketplace. There's a company out of Canada, good company. It's certainly, they have a legitimate product. So if you want to look them up, their name is Graywater, Greyter. But from our perspective, the fact that we use no filters or no membranes is really a game changer.
Well, thank you guys. I wanted to thank Fernando, Bradley, and Valerie for joining us today. And all of this valuable information will be available via our YouTube channel. Once again, go to YouTube, click in Florida Green Building Coalition. And if you could just go ahead and like the channel, you'll get updates when we update it with some more valuable information for you. So, thank you, guys.
Thanks, CJ. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.